Welcome to All Our Parts, where all of it is brought to the table. The messy, the joyful, the mundane, and everything in between. Where we talk about that terrible friendship breakup, where we talk about how we've lost ourselves and how we've come back to ourselves. This is the show that will offer strategy, a laugh, and maybe a cry, but you'll leave feeling like you can make the steps towards being your most authentic self. This episode is for the manifestation girlies, the spiritual girlies that want to better understand how to manifest and what manifestation looks like for them. It was so amazing being able to talk to Giselle about the work that she does, how she defines manifestation, and how we can truly implement manifestation into our own lives. I hope you all enjoyed this episode. Hello, Giselle. It is so great to meet you. It is so great to have this conversation with you.
It's so amazing to be here. Thank you so much. I'm excited to get to be on your podcast and to just talk about spirituality with you.
Yes, I have been wanting to segue into the spirituality conversations, but it just didn't feel right to, or I didn't know what to say by myself. It's so hard to kind of leap into those conversations. So I saw your post on Threads and I was just like, yes, I hope this works out. And so I'm glad it did. And I'm glad to kind of pick your brain about manifestation. It is a word that has come into mainstream that I feel like we know what it means like generally, but people use it in so many different ways. So to kind of open up the conversation and bring the audience to kind of a baseline of where we're speaking, how do you define manifestation?
Yeah, so the way I see manifestation is we're always doing it. So we are the creators of our destiny through our thoughts and our emotions and our actions. So manifestation wouldn't look really any different than someone who's not in talking spiritual language and saying, I'm going to achieve this goal. That to me is they're saying, I'm going to manifest this particular thing. It's the same thing. So it to me, it's just a process of becoming, because when you are creating something, you are becoming a different version of yourself. And that we do it all day, all the time. We're
Mm,
manifesting.
yes, I love that. I think I saw on your a post recently about the embodiment of manifestation too.
Mhm.
It's the act of being, it's the act of doing, it is the act, it is something that is consistent. It is in our thoughts, our beliefs, our emotions, our actions. It is not just one thing. And I love that. I think even in my own spiritual journey of how I see manifesting, it's kind of like watching my life unfold internally first, and then the external might happen sometimes immediately, sometimes 6 months later, and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is exactly what I like been manifesting. This is what I've been imagining, dreaming for over this like period of time. And so it's so many things at one time.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think when people realize, because, okay, the content that I create and whenever I talk about manifestation, I definitely do get the idea just based on what people are saying that they think is separate. It's like this separate thing that I do for this one particular thing that I desire. And so I will manifest that. And in my mind I'm going, what your reality is right now, the life that you are living right now is also your result of manifestation. And to me, when what hit me when I recognized that, or when I realized that, I think I remember someone had said, I don't remember if I read it or someone said it, but it was thoughts create. And that was like the first introduction that I had about the concept of manifestation. And it hit me like tons of weight on me, because it felt like someone had said to me, that also means where you're at that you do not like, your thoughts, your emotions created that, not just the good things that you like. But at the same time, I thought, wait a minute. I mean, I've created all kinds of bad things, so like I had that kind of power. Could I do it for purposely and intentionally for what I desire? So that actually was what got me really interested in how do I work with my thoughts and my emotion to change my life? Because if it's true, I just assumed if it's true, if that is true, and I was really good at it without knowing that I was doing not so great things, but I was apparently really good at it, can I
Yeah.
be really good when I'm intentional about it? And that's the shift. It's just recognizing is radical accountability, is radical self-awareness, is kind of waking up from it's everybody else's fault, and it wasn't me or it was just my circumstances, to wait a minute, could I play with this and see what happens when I actually am intentional about it? So I
Yeah.
wish that's what I desire more people realized is this is a power that you hold all the time for everything in your life. Nothing is separate. Your work isn't separate. Your relationships aren't separate. Everything has to do with your ability to manifest, and not even ability. Like we all have the ability. It's not like, oh, like you have to be good, like good at it. You are good at it. Like you're doing it already. But that manifestation is not the separate thing. It's just under the umbrella of spirituality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just spoke to something that even the the dichotomy of manifestation, it's not always all positive. Like when we look at manifestation as something that can be intentional and on purpose, in the same way that we want to manifest a healthy relationship, stable job, abundance, wealth, all of those things, we can also manifest through our actions, through our thoughts, self-destructive behaviors, unhealthy relationships, attachment, soul ties, all of these things, and sometimes without our awareness. And so when we're involving ourselves in the same patterns and behaviors that lead us to those destructive habits, how can we get to, how can we expect ourselves to manifest the positive when we are constantly still feeding into the self-destructive habits that we, currently hold?
Yeah. And a lot of those, aren't even ours. I mean, all of them, they're not even ours. It's like, is I remember I held so tight to my trauma identifications, to my victim mentality, to my like, it can't be mine. I can't possibly be the one that creates the life I desire. Like I held on to all of that stuff because I thought it was mine. And then when I realized none of this is mine, like there is no, I wasn't born like this. Like I came in whole and complete. This stuff doesn't belong to me. So if I can shed them, literally, like if I could just peel them off me and be like, that's not mine and this isn't mine and I've been believing this for so long because my mom believed it. It's not even mine, and like take all this stuff out, then I just come back to who I always was, that whole and complete part of myself. Instead of thinking of I'm broken, I was broken, I needed healing, it's more like just I don't need healing. I just need to get rid of this crap. Like none of it is mine. If I get rid of it, then I'll remember, oh yeah, that's right. I'm whole, complete, and majestic. Like, let's do this. Yeah.
And you just spoke to a process, I think, that we don't even think. I mean, that's the hard work right there, is what is yours versus what is someone else's that has placed onto you, before we can even dream about the life that we truly desire, that is truly aligned with who we are. We've got to separate what is somebody else's and what is mine. And that is the space that I find myself in currently. And even just in thinking about how I imagine, my life, I'm like, oh wow, that's something my dad used to say to me, that's something my
Mhm.
dad instilled in me. Oh, that's my mom's anxiety. That is something that I am now, that I have internalized for so long, and I have not separated it from myself. And so now, whenever I am making decisions, whenever I am and mulling on what I think is right for me, and then I share it out into the world, and then someone inputs their opinion, I'm like, oh, okay, that's theirs. Let it sit in the ether. I remember one time I was sharing something and got a really anxious response from my mom, and I was like, you know what? I haven't eaten today. I haven't slept. This was a really chaotic morning. I'm actually going to let this exist right now.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to come back to it, but I don't want to allow this to muddle the decision that I think is right for me.
Mhm. Yeah, it's so good to be able to just step back. And, actually when someone keeps, because sometimes when you do that, people are like, but I really want to, it kind of depends also on their attachment, like if they are very anxious, like, but I really want to talk about it like right now. And you're like, I haven't eaten. I need some rest. I need to think about this. And sometimes when especially when my kids are like, but we need to talk about it right now. I mean, like, trust me, you do not want me to talk about this right now. Like, this isn't going to be my best self. Let me
Mm-hmm.
just have a moment. But it's so important to, like, it's so good that you're able to do that, to realize, let me not be reactive. Let me be responsive. And for me to be responsive, I need some space. I need some time. Yeah.
And even speaking to the anxious, like, attachment piece, it's that urgency we sometimes feel to have it settled now, to accomplish, to talk about it right now. And it's like, I want to give this the best space that I can. And in order for me to do that, I need to step away from it. And
Yeah.
that can sometimes, it's like, but we're not addressing it now. Oh no, like, what does this mean? It's like, sometimes we have to let things sit, because sometimes there's a better answer somewhere. In the midst of that space, in the midst of that distance, there is a different, a more clear answer.
Yeah. And there was another thing I wanted to bring up too, with because you had said, and we had both said, like, oh, I had the thoughts, some of my mom, or, for you was like some things from your dad, and all of that. What I find fascinating about manifestation is going to mirror our our processes, like our thought processes and our patterns, and where we are in expansion and levels of consciousness. Because I'll give the perfect example. When I first started to really just be like, this is manifestation, let's talk about it. A lot of times people would be asking me, how do I manifest my ex back? And instantly I'm like, you're wanting to manifest someone who doesn't want you and doesn't want to be with you. And apparently, the relationship was not ideal because you're both not together, but you're wanting them back because they are the one. It can only be that person. I can only experience this thing with them. And I wanted to like put a mirror, and I would say these things, but I wanted to be like, look, you have so much you're carrying with you right now that you're wanting to manifest from a place of lack, from a place of limitations, and from a place of feeling that you are not worthy of more. Like, if you could use manifestation, again, not to focus on, I want my ex back, but to be like, wait a minute, I wanted to manifest my ex back. What what is it that, where am I at, that this is something that I want to manifest? Because manifestation is going to show you those things, is a process of becoming. So yeah, you could totally do it. You'll see it all over TikTok. You're going to see, I manifested my ex backs. They texted me back. And I'm like, yeah, you can always manifest. You're good at it. You can always manifest. That's amazing. But like, have you considered where you're at? What are you currently still attached to and holding on to, that this was your desire?
Yeah.
So like, manifestation is going to mirror the places where we need to grow. And if you take that challenge, you'll grow so much faster. You'll grow, meaning like come back to who you really are. Like it's, you say grow, but really it's like come back to your whole and complete self. Because your whole and complete self would be like, why would I manifest my ex back? Like there are thousands of other people. Like, why would I do this? But it's a process of becoming. And to me, that's what's exciting. When I'm manifesting something that's a little bit scary, I'm like, oh, perfect. Because it's going to show me all the things that I still believe that are holding me back and all the storylines that I still am holding on to. And I'll get to see it. And then I'll get to get rid of them so that I can become and come back to myself.
In the same way that we can manifest our hopes, we can also manifest our fears. That fear of
Mhm.
change, that fear of the unknown. And I have found too that in manifesting, the only way I can manifest is if I move forward. A
Yeah.
lot of times I'm like, I want to reconcile this. I want to bring this person with me into this next chapter and where I'm moving forward. And I actually just talked about this in my own therapy. I was like, I realized if I'm going forward, if I am going this way, if I look back, if I go back and think that bringing this person with me is going to make this make sense, it's like actually no, because I'm not that person that I was when I was with that person, when that person and I were engaging. And so I just have to look forward. And if
Mhm.
our paths cross, then our paths cross, and that's a completely separate thing. But forcing something as my life is flowing and everything is starting to unfold in the way that I have manifested and imagined, then I have to keep going forward.
Mhm. Yeah. And honestly, some, because I've also had people say like, how do um I remember there was this one person and they said something like, "Oh, you don't, if you're concerned about other people, it's because you're not manifesting them to be how you would desire them to be." I'm like, "That's true. That's true. But I'm trying to do me right now." Like I'm just trying to learn like myself and come back to who I am and use the energy for that. Like sure, if I have that all settled and I'm at my, my just literally beaming with an amazing energy, then maybe I would have capacity to also everybody around me make them also in harmony, together and in synergy. But honestly, I don't. So I'm going to focus on my inner wellness and the energy towards what I'm creating. And the people that I need will show up in my life. I don't have to conform and change everybody else. The people that I need will show up in my life. And that has been the case every single time. Yeah. So so I get it. It's like you move forward. You do you move forward. And if that person moves forward with you, perfect. If they
Yeah.
don't, you've just opened the door to like a lot of other people that are going to be in your life who are going to meet you where you are even ahead. And so I'd rather put my focus there
Yeah.
than, going back and trying to pull others,
Yeah.
like pull this one person that I was like, no, it's got to be you, like pull that that person with me. Because I see that as I see that whenever I think like that, I see that as what do I believe? What story am I telling myself? Am I telling myself that they can't possibly, I'm not worthy of, I'm not enough of uh everything that I desire at this current moment? That I need to like bring back, go into the past and try to bring somebody with me.
Yeah.
So I always will challenge my thoughts when that happens. I mean, like, wait, where am I doing this from? Is it expansive? Is it a higher level of consciousness? Or am I stuck in a storyline? And then that's my opportunity for like growth. Like, come back to yourself. Like,
Yeah.
these things aren't yours.
Yeah. Sometimes we have to let the universe work. Like the universe will sort it out and we just have to sit back. When we try to create our world like Play-Doh, when we're trying to fit every corner and box into how we imagine it to be. We don't allow ourselves to see how expansive everything is when we are
Mm.
trying to like mold it, and we're like, oh, I see you here, but I want to fit you right here perfectly. It's like, no, but then we've limited ourselves. Ultimately, we have limited our ability to receive, to watch the magic just happen.
Oh my gosh, so true. Is trying to, from our little human mind, being like, I've got the whole picture and I want it like this, you know? It's like, and forgetting that we're spirit. We are part of the universe. We're part of the greater consciousness. So if we get out of our tiny little human mind, who can only see this tiny little reality, and be like, okay, never mind. What I actually desire is this feeling or this lifestyle, or, to live my life in this way. I might be limiting myself to what that looks like. So I think is this, but it could also be better. So whatever else it can be, because I think visually. So I almost think about it like, um this is the thought of what I think it is, and it's up against like this round wall type of thing, and behind it is like all the other amazing things that my mind can't even comprehend. And so like if I take this wall of it has to be this way and I just take it out, and I'm like, oh, okay. Forget, like, yeah, that looked good at first, but it could also be whatever else is out there, and the endless amounts of opportunities.
Yeah.
So it's another thing I always have to remind myself. It's like, don't dictate the how or exactly how it needs to look like. Like, focus more on how do you want your life to flow? Like, how do you want to spend your days and how do you want to feel in that? And then allow it to be anything and everything else that gives you that. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're seeking. We're seeking a feeling. So if you get the feeling and the way that you want to live, then who cares how it actually happens? And that's way more abundant than if I try to dictate how it needs to happen.
Right. The scarcity mindset that, especially if we've already seen it and we're like, oh, this is exactly how I want it to be. I've seen it. I know it. I know how it feels. And it's like, yes, and you're not there anymore. And so
Mhm.
trying to drag it across with you, you're only limiting all of the millions of trillions of possibilities that our minds cannot always conceptualize, that we can't conceptualize. We have no clue because we're not allowing ourselves to be connected with spirit, to be whole, to be ourselves and allow the magic to just unfold. And I think that is a huge misconception also of the idea of detachment, is like it's this jaded, it is separate, but it's actually allowing the outcome to be what it is. It's saying, okay, see an outcome, there is an outcome. I'm not attached to how it looks.
Yeah, that non-attachment is so important. And it serves even as a really good reminder to me, because I tend to be pretty ambitious. I tend to always have like, all right, we've reached this level. Let's go the next few, actually skip a couple of levels and go up there. And I'll plan it all out, what it's going to look like and how it needs to be. And when I do that, I end up so much in my head that it feels exhausting. And that's usually my first sign. That's like, you're exhausted by your own thoughts right now. It feels like you're, trying to figure out calculus, and I'm really bad at actually, like, I'm not good at math, but you're trying to figure out calculus and it just feels like I can't figure it out. That's usually my sign of like, oh, because you're attached to how it needs to be and you're really focused on how it needs to happen. Like, can you come back, come back to now, come back to enjoying life right now? And yes, you have your goals and your ambitions, but can you just focus on what your next step is right now, just today, and allow
Yeah.
the rest to unfold, as they will unfold? Like, that's a this is like a perfect timing reminder for me of that. Like, do that.
Yes, that's I'll lay my head down and be like, okay, this is how this will unfold. This is all the people, this is all the things, this is exactly how it will happen. And then I've just lost like 2 hours of sleep. I'm like,
Yeah.
I could have been asleep. And I'm mapping out every route and
Yeah.
every board, everything that could go wrong. And I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yes.
Now I'm exhausted. And now I won't even be able to see the actual path that will unfold because I'm looking
Mhm.
for the thing that I've created in my head, the how it's supposed to happen, what the outcome will look like, that I might even miss it because
Yeah.
I am so focused on the image that I've created for myself.
That is such a good point. I might even miss it. Because recently I was a lot in my head and I was formulating and making plans, and it's like this and like that. And it felt exhausting. And I knew, hey, this is usually your sign. Exhaustion of your own thoughts. This usually means you are way too much in your head. And I have a coach myself. I feel like I I honestly feel like almost everyone benefits from having another person who is a third party, and they're not in your head the way that you're in your head, and they're hearing you talk, and they are like, okay, all this messiness on this side, what if we just did ding this? And you're
Hmm.
like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. And I had that same experience yesterday. I had a session with my own coach, and I'm here throwing all my formulations of, what I'm trying to figure out. And he literally was like, or you could do this one path that doesn't require you to do any additional extra work, but you could maximize the results. I'm like, thank you. Thank you for this. I'm glad I pay you for pointing out the obvious. But yeah, like it does help to have somebody just hear you sometimes and help you get out of your own head.
Yeah, a third party that isn't even attached to you, it maybe doesn't even benefit, like there's no loss or gain with you, there's none of their own experience that can be fleshed out, just an unbiased third party that does care about you, that does want to see your bet, that has your best intentions at heart. And
Mhm.
it's hard to find, honestly, it's really hard to find that third party. And I have so much gratitude for my own therapist who allows me to look at the bigger picture. She like zooms out. That's what I always, she like
Mhm.
zooms it out 500 and it's like, okay, this is where we are right now. And let's just focus on that because
Mhm.
I'm trying to fix something that's a year ahead or hasn't even happened, or it might not even happen. But I'm like, I'm manifesting the outcome instead of allowing the process to do what it needs to do.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and we weren't ever meant to do this alone. Like I'm such a big believer in relationships, and not I don't mean at all remotely romantic relationships, but just like relationships with other human beings. That's truly how we grow, is through the
Hmm.
process of relationships. And like with your therapist, that's a relationship. With my coach, that's a relationship. Like it's not individualism. We were never meant. We didn't even come from a history of individualism. We came from community. And
Yeah.
so it's surrounding yourself with people who are going to support you, who are going to believe in you, who are going to mentor you, and there might be another person who like teaches you, and another person who just relates to you. And yeah, in today's society, they might not all be in person in a big group, right, all next to each other, but we piecemeal it together and we create that community. And so, yeah, people need people. Like we need each other to, even our conversation, like reflected something back to me of like, oh, this is why you've been feeling this way. You've been in your head, like it's just, again, just like being able to talk like this with other people who have your best interests in heart.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Community is everything. And I always say, you are truly who you surround yourself with.
Mm.
Like you are like our relationships are a projection of even our relationship to ourselves, like how we cultivate, how we care for ourselves. We're able to then project that out into community. But I firmly believe I'm only as great, I'm only as well as the people that I choose to have very closely to me, who I choose to have conversations with, because energy is very transactional, and I
Mhm.
pick up energy very quickly. And so again, manifesting the self-destructiveness, I'm saying I'm picking up all of this energy, I'm carrying it with me, and I am wondering why I'm feeling exhausted, heavy, why I'm feeling so insecure, so like finding the ways to shrink myself. It's like I have no clue if this is mine or if this is someone else's that I'm carrying, because I'm it's like I'm a leech. I am just fueling so much into myself right now. And so looking at, okay, if I want to be community oriented, what does that look like for me? It's been having the friend, like choosing the friends wisely, choosing your mentors wisely, choosing the people you confide in wisely, because that energetic transaction is what is fueling me. And if it's not fueling me, then it's taking from me.
Mhm. And the key word that you used is choosing. Because I'll also have people say, yeah, but the people around me, like they don't support me, they're very negative. I'm like, not everyone that is in your current reality needs to stay in your current reality. You might need to go and choose other people to be your new community. And I actually think that happens a lot. I know for me, the previous people that were close in my life, and that life where I carried so many of these identifications, they're not currently all in my life. I had to choose other people. And I tend to be pretty intentional about this too. I'm going to choose people who are where I desire to be. I'm going to get myself close to those people, as close as I can. I'm going to put my phone on do not disturb because I just got a text. Okay. Um, but I'm going to, and I'm doing this right now. I mean, because I have a vision for where I want to go, and I'm surrounding myself with people who are living a similar vision. And that might be listening to their podcast, or it might be joining their mastermind, or it might be engaging with them in social media, or it might be, and it is, physically taking myself where people who are living a similar vision are. Because what you said is 100% true. Like, we are the best of the people that we surround ourselves with. We're an accumulation of the people we surround ourselves with. So naturally, if you want to be this version of yourself, then make sure the people around you resemble that version or better. So it's choosing. We have
Yeah,
choices. we have, we
choice.
have autonomy.
We have choice, and that is, I think sometimes we, even with, we spoke about family early, but with family, with anybody, truly, like blood is great and all, but we still have choice. We still have that free will to say, you know what, if this is not nourishing me, if this is not a relationship that's going to move me to the next step forward, then it's something I cannot have it so close to me. At least for myself, it's
Mhm.
with when I look at any of my relationships, my friendships, even like people that I would work with professionally or collaborate with, it's like I have to be very choosy of the people that I keep very closely to me, or even talk to or engage with, because that also can cloud my thoughts. That can also cloud what I'm trying to create, and then it can get confusing, and then it gets very noisy, and I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, I have made it very noisy, and now I need to step away because I've maybe chosen something that wasn't the best for me at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Because who we are is going to, or who we have around us is going to be a reflection of who we are.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I get that and I see that. but I'm wanting to not stay in this version. So I'm wanting to go towards, again, closer to who I really am, which is another version of myself. And so to do that, I'm going to find people that are reflecting that version of myself and putting in the effort. There's just not a lot of, and family, again, it's like you said, that, yeah, blood is important, but also not to the point where you stay so attached to them that you're not able to move forward because your attachment to them. There are ways to separate yourself without completely cutting somebody off. Like, again, we have choices, and all of these are releasing your parents from the attachment that you have of them, releasing, your sister or your brother from the attachments of them, and realizing that's them, that's their storyline, but I don't need to penetrate that. I don't need to like surround myself so closely with it. I can step back too,
Yeah.
even if it's family.
Yeah.
Often when it's family. It's like really, it's like family and intimate relationships. Like
Mhm.
usually those are the two that are going to say a lot about where we are and where we want to go. Yeah.
From early on until it really carries and just informs so much of it can inform so much of who we are. Um,
Mhm.
what does it look like in your own practice to manifest? Like, how did you? What What does it look like for you?
Yeah. So I instill certain beliefs. So I realize where my current belief is. In fact, actually, let me give you a really detailed one because I'm always in the process of something. So, one thing I recognized about myself is that I would be really good at manifesting a good amount of money. I was really good to the point where I'm like, man, I'm good at manifesting money, which I am. And then I would come back to like barely anything. And then I would be really good at manifesting a whole bunch of money. And I kept thinking to myself, what is that story that I'm stuck in? What is that belief that I have that this seems to be my cycle? It's like a lot of abundance. Oh, we're barely making it. A lot of abundance. Oh, we're barely making it. And because I'm like this, and my baseline of barely making it was low, right? So it's like it was low, barely making it. And then there would be like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what to do with all this money kind of thing. And where I had to get really honest with myself was I was getting something out of that. I was getting something of this. Actually, the closest example I can give is, and I'm not a Christian, and I didn't grow up in Christianity at all, but I do know about it, obviously. And I know like missionaries. So, like, missionaries usually are living at bare minimum of their lifestyles. And then they rely on gifts and donations. And they're like, God gave us this money, and now we can build a church or whatever. And there's this like, glorification of like, oh, we just got all this money, thank God for it. And to get that kind of like satisfaction, you have to pretty much be at baseline, because that's your baseline, and then you get all this money, thank God, God is so good. So I was doing a similar cycle in my own life. I had to put myself in baseline, so I was manifesting that. Okay, so I was manifesting me being in baseline. And then I was manifesting this high of being able to get all the money. So I was getting something from it. I was satisfying myself because I'm like, whoa, we did it again. Except that it was a self destructive storyline, because why was my baseline barely making it? Like, why did I have to go to barely making it to create this story of, oh, we got all this money? So once I recognize that, I'm like, I'm getting something from it. This is why that cycle constantly repeats. And it repeated like a good deal of my life. So once I realized that, I'm like, all right, what do we do now? Because obviously I'm really like in a high when this happens. So what I did was I created a different baseline. So instead of my baseline needs to be barely making it. I was like, what if your baseline is still at a surplus? And then from that place is where you're like, whoa, we created all of this, but you're at a surplus. So, in order to do that, I had to shift my beliefs. So then I will create a new belief. For example, at the time it was, what, I don't remember the exact wording. It was something like, isn't it amazing how you always have extra at the end of the month? It was something basic, very simple, because, I was shifting a belief that I had held so strongly. So it was something that just got me above it. And so I would put reminders on my computer about it. And I would look in my mirror and I would smile and I would say that to myself. And I would write it down in my journal and feel it when it was happening. And sure enough, because once I have that belief, my brain, this is where the neuroscience come in, my brain's going to be like, well, we have to prove you right. So, because you really believe this, and I have to prove you right. So, I'm going to start looking for ways to make this happen. And so next thing I know, it took less than a month and I had already shifted that my baseline was now a surplus. And so that's how manifestation will look like for me. It's a process of recognizing where I'm at. What's the story? What am I getting from it? Because good or bad, I'm getting something from it. And then what do I want to believe instead? And what emotion do I feel when I believe that? And then how can I instill that in my subconscious? So I would even fall asleep with the thought of, you always have extra at the end of the month and the feeling with it. And I would kind of daydream myself to sleep with that. And so I put it in my subconscious in as many ways as possible. And then once it became a belief of my subconscious, my brain's like, we will make it happen. And the actions came seamlessly, like they came easy. It was effortlessly. I almost like every single time this happens, I can't even tell you, all right, how did it become a surplus though? I would have to like backtrack and figure out how it happened. It just happens because I shifted my belief. And so I'm doing that still. Like I'm moving. I work with a coach myself. I'm like, I don't have time for a regular timeline. Like I want to skip timelines, because I've skipped them before. So I'm ready to skip timelines again. Time is a human construct. So we don't need to stick to this. And it's just a matter of, all right, then what's my new belief in that next time, in that several level timeline? What's the belief there? Believe it now, you skip timelines. So because I've done it many, many times. So it's just a process of shifting beliefs. Those beliefs get into your subconscious, your actions naturally will come to you. And you have to be willing to do the actions because a lot of people do get stuck in the actions and they're like, but it's so scary. But I have this fear that I'm like, yeah, okay. But this current version of you want to stay with it? Because if
Yeah.
you are, then stay with that fear. Otherwise, you have to go through the fire of that fear to get to where you desire to go. And I'm always willing to do the actions. It might take me, sometimes it does take me a few days where I'm like, "Ugh, that's gonna be so nerve-wracking or whatever. But I know too much. It's like you know very well that if you don't do that action, you're not gonna get to where you need to go. So do the action. That's where the transformations happen.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And you also speak to even the maintenance piece of it because having to keep a surplus, you got to maintain. And so that mean even if manifestation is actions, thoughts, and beliefs, it's like, okay, these actions weren't serving me before. If I want to live in this abundance, if I want to live in a space where I am receiving and able to maintain, then my actions and my beliefs, my thoughts have to be aligned with the idea that I am able to maintain, preserve, and move in within this next space.
Mhm. Yeah, it's basically self-concept work. Self-identity work is just shifting your identity now versus waiting for something to happen because that's just not how it works. Like you can't wait for something to happen and then start shifting your beliefs and your actions and also like it's not going to happen. So I have to shift who I am. I have to become that version that I know I can be. I have to become it now. I have to walk like that person. I also do we could all do this, is where you do a form of self hypnosis and you communicate with that version of yourself, and that version of yourself can tell you what you need to do, because that version there, we all exist in the same time, same place. So if that version of myself already is living that life, I'm just entering that frequency and merging into it. So I will at times get in front of that version of myself and be like, what do I need to know? And she will tell me. She's like, this and that, this is what you need to do. And it's usually really simple stuff. It's literally like one step, two step. It's like really close to home type things, but it works every time. It literally does help me to get into that frequency and merge into that identity.
Well, this was amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to just talk to me. And I feel like I have things that I can go think about and journal, right after this conversation.
Same.
But as we close, did you have any offerings or programmings that you wanted to share out, that you wanted to speak, that you are, currently working on?
Yeah, so there are currently three ways to work with me. One of them is the unfolding, which is it's almost like getting a book on how to manifest. And you purchase that and you do it yourself. And then the one where I pour my heart and soul into is the mastermind. So the mastermind is a small group. It's by application only because the synergy is amazing. I even vet everybody in that we get on a phone call and make sure there's a good fit for them, a good fit for us. The mastermind is currently, and I don't foresee this changing, it is currently only for women and queer folks. And then I also work one-on-one with people, and that's for everybody. So everybody that wants to work one-on-one, they can always contact me. And again, we also vet, we do a discovery call, make sure that's a good fit. And then for everybody else who's like, I just want more information, you could follow me in any of my social accounts because I talk about this stuff every single day, or my YouTube account. And you can get a lot of that information, get started, get a vibe for who I am. And if it feels right, you'll reach out to me, because that's what always happens. Like, you'll reach out to me and we'll find a way to connect you to one of my offerings that's best for you.
Truth. If it is a fit, you all can find her on Threads, Instagram. It's amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time out to talk.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'll talk to you later.